Hello and welcome. This is a video giving an overview of what the seals, trumpets and vials of Revelation are and how they interact with each other. I will be going through each one in more detail in other videos. This is just a summary. So what are the seals of Revelation? Well, these are an overview of events that show Jesus initiating each stage of the judgment process from heaven. First we have the protecting and or sealing of believers before the judgment starts, but only protection from the judgment and wrath, not from persecution and death from man. Then there are war, famine, pestilence and death of a quarter of the population. Now all these are 4 horsemen who go out and ride, and they may well all stay riding until the end of the judgment period. So the first rider will be protecting or sealing anyone who is turning to God, but famine, pestilence and death would also be around. If this is the case, then the 4th rider may be killing a quarter of the population every time, or every few times, he circles the earth. So the population would continually be decreasing by a quarter in an unknown time span. This may be the reason why the days need to be shortened so some flesh can be saved. But there are also 3 more seals, one that focuses on deaths of believers, so it is telling us that after this war starts, after a quarter of the population has died, at some point there will be a mass turning on believers and great persecution or great tribulation, but to not be concerned as the time is nearing for Jesus' return. The next seal then gives us the sign immediately prior to Jesus' return, so we know at that point his return is imminent. After this seal we are told about the sealing of the 144,000. Now as this is spoken about after the 6th seal, these may well be the elect that are still alive on the earth. Then we are shown a great multitude of the elect that were killed in the tribulation period. So putting these 2 together, they most likely refer to the dead and the living that will be taken when Jesus returns. Then there's the 7th seal, which initiates the final part of the wrath of God, but also the resetting of the earth ready for the kingdom age. Well, what of the trumpets of Revelation? Well, these are the judgments, focusing on the false church, which is also known as Mystery Babylon. These start with an angel casting a censer into the earth, and there being voices, thunders, lightnings, and an earthquake. So this may well indicate a worldwide earthquake. But after this, the trumpets are blown. The first one is hail and fire mingled with blood. This is the start of a wild war, which destroys many crops and trees, and very likely people and animals as well, but the focus is on food production. The next trumpet refers to the capital city of Mystery Babylon being utterly destroyed, and with the mention of the sea it may well be that this capital of Mystery Babylon is by or near the sea, and that the war is being waged there as well. Then there's the 3rd trumpet. This is a man-made weapon which will poison a third of the fresh water wherever it hits. Then there's the 4th trumpet, where a third of the sun, moon and stars are darkened. This may well be something in the atmosphere that is blocking out a third of the light from being able to reach the earth. And again, this could be the result of war. Then there's the 5th trumpet. So this is the beast of the earth, or the false prophet, coming onto the scene. He comes in with an army, sounding very much like attack helicopters or drones, with which to attack people who have already taken the mark of the beast. After this there's the 6th trumpet, which also indicates another part of the war with a third of the people on the earth being killed, possibly with tanks. At this point the 7 thunders speak, but we don't know what they say. After this John measures the temple, and then the 2 witnesses come on the scene. After the death of the 2 witnesses there is an earthquake and they are raised. So the 7th trumpet is blown. We know that Jesus has returned to raise the dead at this point, as shown by the resurrection of the 2 witnesses, and to take the living, make war, and judge the remaining population. Well, what are the vials in Revelation? They are the wrath of God, and start after the temple in heaven is opened. The angels who have the vials are then told to go their ways and pour them out. So some vials may be poured out at the same time in different places. The first 3 are on the earth, seas, rivers and fountains, and we're told the people receiving these plagues have already started killing the saints and prophets. The next 2 are poured on the Son and the Beast kingdom. So the first 5 vials all have a common denominator. They are all against the people of the earth, seemingly focused on the ones who have taken the mark of the beast, the ones that are killing the saints and the prophets. Now this is reminiscent of what we are told about the 2 witnesses. Some of the plagues mentioned in Vials 1 to 5 are also mentioned with them, specifically Vials 2, 3 and 4. And we know that these two witnesses can smite the earth with all plagues, which in itself is reminiscent of the plagues of Egypt in Exodus, which could also include Vials 1 and 5, as they would mirror the boils and darkness. So it's possible that Vials 1 to 5 are actually a representation of the plagues some of the wicked will receive in the last 3.5 years from the two witnesses. This would explain why the world celebrates when they are killed, thinking that they are at peace and safe from any more plagues. However, the sixth vial is different. It is not a plague against man, but a preparation for God's final wrath. This is where a lie goes out to gather all the nations to Jerusalem and dries the river Euphrates so that the king of the east can join. The nations will be gathered together ready for Jesus' return, but they will be defeated. Then the seventh vial is poured out into the air. This is done right at the end, after the resurrection of the dead, taking of the living, judgment of nations, and protection of mortals going into the kingdom. This is God's final judgment and wrath on the living still on the earth, and changing the earth ready for the kingdom age to begin. So after that brief overview, we can see how they interact with each other. First, we know the elect will be protected or sealed from the coming judgment and wrath, and that will extend all the way up until the kingdom starts. Then seals 2, 3 and 4 give an overview of the earth at this time: war, famine, disease and death, which will kill 1/4 of the population, either once or time and time again. This is the time of the first 6 trumpets, which we are told will destroy food, crops and trees, destroy the capital of Mystery Babylon, and have a war at sea with 1/3 of the creatures and ships being destroyed. 1/3 of the drinking water will be poisoned, then the atmosphere will be affected and we will lose 1/3 of the light from the sun reaching the earth. This is both literal and figurative at the same time. Sunlight will reduce on the earth as the light of the truth gets diminished from all the lies and war going on, especially as the next trumpet indicates the false prophet, who will lead the beast kingdom, comes on the scene. But he fights against others who have the mark of the beast, so even the beast kingdom is not unified. Then there is a massive battle where 1/3 of the population is killed. This may be the point where the beast kingdom receives what seems to be a deadly head wound, but comes back against all odds, and people think it's undefeatable and worship it because of this. And this is where I think I need to put in a word of warning. The fourth trumpet, where the sun, moon and stars are darkened, may seem like the events just before Jesus' return as spoken of in the 6th seal. But this is not that time. This is not showing Jesus' return. The next leader to rise up is the false prophet. So if people think the fourth trumpet is the sign of Jesus' return, then they may be deceived into thinking the false prophet is speaking the truth. This false prophet is not a Messiah, not the Messiah, or making the way clear for the Messiah, even if he attacks some people with the mark of the beast, as Jesus would be expected to do. Then there's the 6th trumpet that speaks of the river Euphrates, as does the 6th vial. This is not the 6th vial. This massive battle where the false prophet may well be victorious against all odds is not the battle of Armageddon where Jesus wins. We know a great deception will come on the earth from God. I do wonder if this is part of it, so please be aware of this possibility. And one of the reasons why people may follow the wrong path is that they think that we are in the beginning of sorrows now, and the next event is the tribulation. But I don't think we are. I think the events currently happening around the world are just a shadow of what is going to happen in the beginning of sorrows. And I think that's why Jesus said about the beginning of sorrows and that the end is not yet, because it will seem like it may be. And I don't think we've reached that amount of despair or sorrow with the world events to feel like the end is here. So after the beginning of sorrows, the 5th seal is opened. This shows there will be mass persecution and death of believers. This persecution and death would have happened before this, but this will be extreme compared to before. But soon after this starts, the 2 witnesses come on the scene, and with them the first 5 vials of plagues to put on anyone they want to, anyone who is against God, possibly specifically aimed at the people and or nations who are actively trying to kill the saints and the prophets. And at some point in all this, a lie will go out to the nations from the beast kingdom to gather them all to Jerusalem. This is the time of the great tribulation. Then after this the 6th seal is opened, and Jesus returns with the 7th trumpet. The dead and living are taken. Jesus and the newly changed saints go to war and are victorious. Jesus judges the nations as to who will get into the kingdom as mortals, And when he is finished, he opens the seventh seal, which allows the seventh vial to be poured out on the wicked that have been rejected at the judgment, and to change the earth ready for the kingdom age. So this shows a very brief overview of the interactions between the seals, trumpets and vials. Thank you for listening, and God bless.